And welcome everybody to this episode of The Swordsman. We're going live tonight. We're talking about the journey from Godan through to Rokudan. We're going to use some of my Kendo footage from a recent seminar in Dublin where we did some Ippon Shobu shiai practice. We're going to use that as a basis just to talk about some ups and downs of my performance, of which there, I'm sure, are many downs. And with us tonight, or this morning, wherever you happen to be, I've got some really, really esteemed high-level, at least relative to me, there are high-level coaches and respected kendoka in their fields that each bring something very unique to what they do. So I'll start with Masahiro Imafuji Sensei. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for
Renshi Rokudan.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem. And obviously, he runs kendoguide.com. So if you're not familiar with it, I've put links in my description. Head down there, check it out after the stream. He's put out several DVDs and authored books. Just, really informative stuff to help beginners get started in Kendo, and plenty of other tips and guides and tricks and everything to guide you on your way with your journey in Kendo. Second, I've got Blake Bennett Sensei, who is based in New Zealand. His focus, he runs a YouTube channel called Kendo Coach, and it's a great channel if you're like me and you're coaching and you're sort of like more like junior level coach, maybe you're just getting started. Even if you're an advanced coach, many of us in Kendo, we're very focused in our ways, the traditions of Kendo, and if we were shown this way, this is how we're taught, that kind of thing, we pass that on. And what Blake brings to his channel is some differing points of view and a lot of scientific background. So it's like a scientific-based way of coaching and some suggestions, some things that you may not necessarily have thought of, especially in the world of Kendo. So thanks very much, Blake, for coming on, and also Renshi Rokudan. So I'm very grateful to have already 2 Rokudans. Now we're expecting a third. Andy Fisher is on his way. I presume he's been delayed or held up. So we'll not worry about that for now. When he's ready, we'll jump on, I'm sure, and we'll bring him on. Okay. So I'm just going to start off with a couple of lighthearted questions, and it'll give us a chance to chat, and hopefully Andy will be ready and he'll jump in whenever he can. So my first question for you guys today, particularly since, obviously we've got a native Japanese and we've got somebody who's spent significant time in Japan living there, and I understand you took your degree there as well, did your studies there, Blake. So I've got this question for you, which is basically, what's your favorite beverage after a really, really tough keiko with Sensei? And I mean those kind of ones where you get knocked about, like your men gets pulled off, the kakari keiko that just won't end.
There's 3. The obvious one, the brown fizzy one. I actually stopped drinking recently for other reasons. I know. And so
awful.
So a lemon, lime, and bitters down at the pub isn't too bad, man. As long as it's cold and wet, it's all good. But I tell you, after that sort of kakari geko thing that you're talking about, Tristan, it was the pokari sweat. That's what it was. Yeah. You know what I mean? There was that vending machine, and there was the 100 yen. I think it's 110 yen now, something
20, 30 now.
Something like that. Inflation, baby. But the pokari sweat, man, that went down. And I got to be honest, I don't do this anymore. But with a cigarette, it was great. I don't do that anymore. But that was a while ago.
Boy.
Pokari sweat and a cigarette. Yep.
And yourself, Hiro?
Brown fizzy one to start off with. When I was high school, that reminded me the honey lemon. That's kind of the managers or girls got together, and they chop up some lemons and put honey on it, and they made juice out of it. And after hard training, and in the summer, that was good. So honey lemon, beer, probably those 2. I don't go for sake right after training. That's bad. That's a big no-no move. No.
Yeah, sounds dangerous.
Yeah.
For myself, it would be Beck's all the way. But if I'm not drinking alcohol, then I'm by no means suggesting that anyone should drink alcohol after training. But I'm not going to lie, it goes down easily after really tough Keiko. But just a Coca-Cola usually hits the spot. I can't lie, but it's probably going to give me pancreatitis or something down the road. Okay, so my next question then for you guys, again, kind of tied in with your time in Japan, is what's the one must-have thing, right, that you miss the most from Japan? This could be like a snack, but it could also be something like, it's like something you just can't get where you are now, right? But it could also be like a technology or a piece of infrastructure, some like daily convenience where you're like, I really miss that. Took it for granted while you were there, and you really miss it now.
There's a few things, but the thing that just jumps to mind and I can't shake is, are you guys familiar with Koko Ichiban, the curry shop?
No, I'm not.
So it's a Japanese curry chain, right? Franchise, and the whole thing is, but that's the main dish, and you can zhuzh it up with different meats or different toppings or whatever. But it was always Koko Ichiban. I always had a chicken katsu kare with a cheese topping, and that was my daily budget. And I used to have that at lunch before training, and then that was what I would have on my way home. When I was in Japan when I was younger, I was living with my older brother, and he was always, but like at that time he was doing one of his PhDs, I think the first one, and so he wasn't, and he wasn't looking after me. He just gave me my stipend for the day, and that's what I would get chicken katsukare with cheese topping, and back in those days it was a cigarette and a beer as well.
I should just say as well, sorry to interrupt, I should just say as well for our viewers, if you're not already in the loop on this, Blake's brother, his older brother, is Alex Bennett Sensei. You may have heard of him. He's 7th Dan Kyoshi, famously professor in Kansai University, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, and of Japanese history and culture, if I'm not mistaken. And he practices many Budo and holds many high grades in all
too
of them.
many.
Let's put it this way: he's a dangerous man with a naginata. He's a dangerous man with a sword. Anyway, please continue.
No, that's the extent of it, man. And when you're wrapped up with connected with someone that's so busy, there really isn't much emphasis on preparing nutritious things in the kitchen. So yeah, when you talk about the must-have or the thing that I miss the most, it's probably an authentic Japanese curry. Not to say you can't get it here, but it's a little bit. Right. It's in ambience, the ambience of the Koko Ichibanya that I miss.
Yeah, I know how you feel about that, because as a South African, like obviously I haven't been to Japan. I haven't just made time for it yet. Basically, I'll plan to go in the future. But as a South African leaving South Africa, there's something we have called boerewors, which is basically a very thick meat sausage that's like made in a spiral, and it's basically made for barbecuing. So we call it braai. And there are people who make it outside of South Africa. Some of them are South Africans, but they usually can't get away with get the ingredients just how they want it, kind of thing. Yeah. And if they can't make it to a price that people would pay, so they struggle to make it a viable business. Right. So it's usually it comes in really underweight in the UK, and it's got all the wrong spices, and it's like you go out and you get really excited and you buy it, and then you throw it on, stick it on your plate, and you're like, nah, just falls short of the mark. Yeah. So I can kind of relate to what you're saying there. Well, what about yourself, Hiro?
Well, recently where I moved to this new town, right? And we have kind of Asian food warehouse kind of thing, grocery store. So I can buy a lot of Japanese food now. So today I went there, got a lot of Japanese food, and probably my wife will be happy when she sees how much I spent. But the okonomiyaki sauce, that's number one thing I must have. And then the other day, Blake, I was thinking, I want to have, I don't remember the exact name of this sauce, like mint sauce for the
lamb?
Lamb chop.
Yeah. I
can't find it here. I mean,
All
of
right.
course.
really?
No, I don't think so.
Now I know what to send you for your birthday, man. That's
Thank
good.
you. Yeah. I love you.
I'll send you a video of me eating a
No.
lamb chop with some mint sauce. That's what I'll send you.
And did I get this right, Hiro? Are you based in Minnesota? Did you say?
No. Indiana.
Indiana. Right. Okay, well then I suppose I could see how that wouldn't be the kind of thing that's available there. It's kind of a very European kind of thing, I guess.
Quite colonial, isn't it? It's quite British.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my next question is, since I'm up for taking Godan exam, I'm going to be, well, I am 39 at the minute. I'll be turning 40 in January. So how old were you guys when you took your Godan? Can you remember?
Yeah.
Hiro looks like he's struggling.
I believe I was 25.
And were you in Japan?
I actually sat that one in New Zealand. There was a delegation of Hachiran that came over right as I was eligible, and I spent that weekend folding hakama. So that's all you need to do to pass 5th Dan. By the way, you just have to fold hakama. I was convinced that that's all I had to do. I think I was 25. I'm well and truly eligible for 7th Dan now. I got my 6th Dan back in 2015, I think. So, yeah, that's a different story.
If you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I'm 40. How old does that make you, Hiro?
Very different situation to most of my friends and I. We'll be getting to that point much later.
Yeah.
If everything goes tickety-boo. And yourself, Hiro, can you remember?
Well, I remember probably when I don't know. That's a long time ago.
Ballpark even.
I think because I wasn't in Japan. That's what I remember. I wasn't in Japan, so I had to go back to Japan to take 5th Dan exam. But I think since I came to the US, I think it was because I was everywhere, so I didn't have a chance to take exam. So yeah, I think I was 30 or a little bit before 30 or around there, I think.
You were always really you've always been really worried with me catching up in
shut up.
In terms of grade,
Stop.
which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous because Tristan, Hiro was my sensei when I was a little fella. So when I started kendo, Hiro and my brother and a couple of other gentlemen were running the kendo club in Christchurch, New Zealand, where I started. And so Hiro and my brother have always been, they've been my coaches all the way through. And it's just funny, like, because it shakes out at the end, like you get closer in grade, But I remember one thing Alec did say to me once, when he had 6th Dan and I had just got my 5th Dan, and our sister, who's in between us, goes, "Oh, so Blake, you're almost as good as Alec." And Alec said, having a 6th Dan and having a 5th Dan, it's like the difference of having $2 million and having $1 million. Like it's a full $1 million. You know what I mean? Like it might sound close in number, but it's really not. In practicality, it's different.
Yeah, it's interesting that dynamic in Kendo with the grades. When you start out the Q grades and the first few downgrades, it's quite these small jumps. So you could be Sandan, and a beginner might think the world of you. But if you from my perspective, because I was quite lucky when I started Kendo, I had somebody who was already 5th Dan for several years. So coaching people coming up, I never had any kind of complex. It never went to my head. I was like, no, I'm just kind of a smidgen ahead of you. Like, I've got valuable things that I can give to you. I know that. But if I'm not careful at this point, I could also still break your kendo. So I'll tread carefully here. But it's interesting because it definitely seems to be this kind of shift, right, for most people when that transition. It's either at Sandan, depending on the panel, I think, and the climate of the event that maybe you're actually testing at, right? Whether it's a seminar or whatever the format is. Some people seem to run up into Bother for the first time around Sandan, but mostly it seems to be Yondan now. There's this expression that Yondan's the new Sandan or something like that. So I get the impression they used to have a higher failure rate at Sandan. Like that was your first point of getting knocked back for a lot of people, but now it seems to be more common as Yondan.
I guess that makes sense when, because, with mindful of other global events, the general trend of numbers is upwards. There's more and more people doing Kendo, I think. And if that is the case, there's more depth to it anyway, and people are more opportunities to get to those grades. So we've probably got a higher concentration of, those earlier dans, first, second, and third. And so, yeah, you might be right that the fourth dan starts to become a little bit more like hen's teeth, as previously 10 years ago it may have been sandan that was a little bit rarer.
I have some perspective on this as well, which is that in that all the way that sort of build up to sandan, a lot of it is about how you're moving. It's things you can physically show and talk about. This is the shape of what you're doing. This is what it looks like. Can you hear the sound of it? The sound is wrong. This is a better sound. That kind of thing. Things, they're very sort of tactile and relatable in that sense. Whereas once you move on from that part, you start talking about sen, initiative, seme, a lot more. And it becomes a little bit more conceptual. And it's things that you need to, as a kendoka, the coach can kind of only take you so far in what they say to you. You have to do a lot of reflection. So the onus is a little bit more on you to reflect between your keiko, or go away and reflect after your keiko, and try to be purposeful. I think when you come back in the dojo, I think it's very easy to fall into the habit of doing your keiko, and it could have gone well, or it could have gone not so well, but walking out the door and not really giving it much thought after that. Or, can you start to begin to train yourself to be able to reflect on things and come into your next session with a bit of an agenda? And it might not be a complicated thing. It might just be, that technique last week was really, really just, it wasn't coming together. I know it wasn't coming together. I'm going to spend a bit more time working on that, and, I'm going to practice that with people who are like a little bit lower level than me or something like that, to see if I get cleaner, or that kind of just mentality of being a bit more purposeful in your practice. Because I know for myself, in my earlier levels, I just used to feel my way through. I just used to throw myself at sensei and run into a brick wall and go, okay, that obviously wasn't right. And then the times where you sort of broke through, just try if remember the feeling, because nobody used to tell me. I had a kind of old school teacher like that. Not many words were spoken, unless something badly was going wrong. Your kote is terrible. What's happened to your kendo? I get the odd exclamation from time to time, but generally you had to learn by feel. An attack succeeded or it failed, and you kind of and then you'd have to go run up after the session and see if there was advice, if you wanted a bit more clarification. And then you might get something really esoteric from them. Oh, you just need more seme. And for a junior, you're like, what does that mean? And so then you have to run to your senpai and be like, Sensei says this. What does it mean? But I think once you hit that, once you pass your ondan, the responsibility is much more on you. And, there's a lot less hand-holding, and there's a bit more freedom, I think, to bring a bit more of yourself, your character, to your keiko. Does that make sense? You start to see some people have a style, almost, in their kendo.
Yeah, I agree with it, and I think that in part it's probably once you get to later, let's say those mid-range dans, third, fourth, fifth sort of thing, there's, like we talked about just before, there's probably less expertise, shall we say, someone who's got a little bit more experience or capability around you, and therefore the onus does have to fall on your own shoulders to be a little bit more thoughtful and purposeful about what you're doing. My bent, if I can sort of turn it back to my goal with Kendo Coach, is that we try and actually bring that reflection that you're talking about, Tristan, in much earlier, and completely acknowledge that we don't know what we don't know, and so it's important that we have coaches or sensei, senpai, whatever, that can fill in those blanks, and hopefully not too esoteric things that can be sort of understood and implemented for the purpose of learning and performance. But the more we can facilitate opportunities for people of all grades, whether that be in Q, done, whatever, all the way through, to actually go through the process of reflection and actually go through the process of going, all right, what am I working on today? Sensei has given us this as a training goal, as the objective for the lesson. But me personally, this is what I want to get out of it. And we can do that with the beginners, man. We can do that with what we call down in our club, the bluebies, from the newbies, right? The beginners to the bluebies, because they've got the new gear. All the way through to the sandans and the yondans. Everybody should be thinking like you've just described. And it's I think, my goal with Kendo Coach and my own personal coaching is to try and facilitate that right from an early stage. And, there will be more blanks that I have to fill in, obviously, but the higher grades the students get, the less you have to do that. And they've already got runs on the board, so to speak, in that respect, because they're used to reflecting. They're used to having purpose when they come to the dojo, rather than, that 5-step method, as I've talked about before. 5 steps from the door, you go, what the bloody hell am I going to do today? If we can be more purposeful and link the trainings together, with a common thread or a common learning outcome that helps us to perform better over time. And I think that's really important that we do that early. Yeah.
True.
Something I wanted to ask you as well, Hiro, is obviously being native to Japan, the difference in the way people receive their information in the context of a learning environment in Japan as opposed to in the West. So there's usually tends to be a tendency that there has to be more explanation and words used in a Western educational sort of system or format, whereas there's a lot less talking. And I think this is where my first sensei, because he spent time training in Japan, and he was like, well, that's how it's done. And so when he trained us, that's why there weren't a whole ton of words spoken. But he was happy for the senpai, the senior students, to play that kind of role of, you've kind of got a buddy in the dojo who's, if you want detailed explanations, you can ask them then, or you can come up to me after the session if you've got confusion, that sort of thing. But it was very much of like, when we're in these walls, we're do. And I coach kids as well. And I could never get away with them just do. I'll always get somebody to go, but why? I remember there's one lady she's a fundamental core part of our dojo now. I remember teaching her Ippon-me, and she took Hidari Jodan. Now, bear in mind, she knows Chudan and some of the basics and everything. She takes Hidari Jodan. She goes, back down. She goes, but why would I do that? And I was like,
I don't know.
Well, we sort of did know, but I understood her point of from her perspective, she's like, I've got a perfectly good sword in between me and the person coming to kill me. Why would I do this? It's like, okay, pause for thought. Anyway, I just thought it was a funny story, but yeah, it kind of, that sort of situation, I can't imagine a whole lot of that, say, happening in the Japanese Kendo environment where somebody just goes, oh, why are we doing this? Sensei?
But I think, because the Japanese, we start Kendo from little, some start when they were 3, right?
Yeah.
So they just do it. So they don't need explanation.
Yeah.
And it kind of, this is what we do type of thing. But when a lot of people outside Japan start Kendo in their 20s, 30s, 40s, right? So we cannot actually do what we do in Japan. Because I had to find out that in a hard way when I was in New Zealand. So yes, basically it's just, we have to train Kendo differently outside Japan. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a real, I mean, it's a real,
Go ahead, Mark.
clearly it's a cultural thing. And, I often look at how classrooms are structured or run in that case. So for example, in New Zealand, that, that asking why is an encouraged thing, children to explore and learn through questioning, trial and error, and play, right? We learn through play. We know that culturally, and there'll be other reasons, I'm sure, but Japan's got a massive population, and it lends itself to have a little bit more of a top down, shall we say? It's probably a better word for it than that, but a laid out structure of curriculum. This is what we're going to do. The bell goes, we move to the next, to the next, to the next. And you see that, of course, in Western schools as well. But more and more play and encouraging kids to explore and ask why becomes a popular thing. And we will naturally see that in the membership that we have in our clubs. Your story before, Tristan, about the lady asking, why should I do, that's a result of critical thinking that's been encouraged throughout her education, I would hazard a guess. And so I'm not suggesting that one's better than the other. It's just a consequence or an outcome of the way that people are used to learning. And I think that is something, it's a tension that we have to be mindful of as coaches, right? If we're not Japanese coaches, or we're coaching outside of a culture where that's quite a common approach, just to do as Sensei says. We have to be careful of that, because I've found in the past, when I've tried to facilitate people to ask why and question and think critically in the dojo, they're going, look, can we just get on and you tell me what to do? Because that's why I do a martial art, is for the coach or the sensei to provide a structure and a discipline for me to follow. So there is a tension that I think we have to be mindful of that. There's people that want that, and that's cool. And there's people that would prefer to unpack and explore, and that's cool too. It's finding the balance of that so that we, and this is why the coaching job is such a difficult one, particularly when we're outside of a culture that lends itself to the top-down hierarchy.
Yeah, that's why we need second dojo to talk about it.
Yes.
Right?
Some of the best tips I've ever got. Yeah, Sensei, would you like a whiskey?
Yeah.
I remember I was at a seminar in Edinburgh, and I was like only Shodan or something like that. And I just, for some reason, found myself sat at the table with Sumi Sensei, Masahiro Sumi Sensei, and so I'm sitting there and offering beers and all that sort of thing. And I just told him a funny story outside the door or something like that. But that was enough. So from that time, he remembered me. And it was maybe 6 years or something passed before the next time I saw him. But he remembered, and he sort of recalled the punchline. He was like, oh, I remember you, So yeah, top advice, like if you're watching this and, you haven't done that sort of thing, don't mess it up. Don't crawl all over them, right? But just the odd common courtesy goes a long way.
Get some good stories under your belt before you go to the
Make sure you got something good to talk about. Okay, well, let's move on to, I'll share my screen here and we'll take a look at a clip then. I'm going to assume Andy's run into trouble. Okay, so we'll just press ahead. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll look at, so it's the Ippon Shobu, and then there'll be like a slow motion of the Ippon itself. And then I'll bring it back down off the screen and we'll talk about what I could have done better, the interaction, that kind of thing. So the first opponent is Godan, has been for a good couple of years already, as far as I know. Like I think he's closer to 6th than he is to 5th, if that makes sense. Okay, 1 second here. Okay, let's get going. So we're just on the right-hand side here, obviously. And it's a group of fourth dans and fifth dans mixed. So I'm on the right, and Jason's on the left, he's fifth dan. So I tried for a Sidiagamen here. But
How long ago is it?
popped that through.
I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
what's that?
How long ago is it?
That was, let's see, when were we? About February of this year.
This year.
I'd say late February, maybe early March, something like that. So what are your thoughts? So just a couple of things in terms of waza selection. Jason is very much, he's a big guy, but he's a good few years older than me. He's had significant leg injuries over time that he's recovered from. So he likes to have a really solid kamae and pick his moments. Really, focuses on a lot of composure, and kind of when you come into his kill box, that's when he'll usually take you. So basically, if you hang around in his close mai, that's when he'll usually pick his battles, so to speak. Got a wicked kaishido. Now, what I found is I've had good success trying to break his center using the kote men sequence, but using the kote as a shiotoshi type strategy to open the men. So that was my opening waza. But then I had that feeling that I could draw the men out. So I've been focusing on the sen, trying to take the sen and set up the waza. But I knew there was a bit of a risk because it's a bit more towards Gemyo no waza, Suriagamen. In this situation, it's not like I'm not going for a straightforward technique. I'm going for, kind of quite a difficult ojiwaza to judge and execute, if that makes sense. So I thought the setup was quite good. The timing came roughly when I wanted it to, but his men was very strong. So obviously didn't quite have control of that sen, I think, personally, as well as it should have, because at the end of the day, it wasn't convincing. But what do you guys make of it?
Can you put it back up, mate, and we can maybe talk over the top as it replays?
As it unfolds, yeah, not a problem.
You want to go first, Hiro, baby?
Okay, so it's a shiai, but since you're going for Godan, and the reason I asked when it was, because, if it's a long time ago, your Kendo might be quite different now. But since it's this year, so I'm going to talk about this through the point of view of, passing fifth dan. So so obviously the shiai and shiai you have to strike.
Yep.
Shiai you have to strike a lot. That's kind of you can have to increase the possibility of getting ippon. But Shinsa, Shinsa judges don't like unnecessary strikes, right? And especially for fifth dan, I'm looking at the criteria of for fifth dan. It's from Kendo World 6.1 issue 2011. It's on my website, by the way, so you can go to my website and see this criteria in English as well. It says someone who has mastered the basics and applied skills of Kendo and has outstanding technique. It's very vague. That's why Shinsa is very subjective from judges. And also, probably we have to, I know in the US, I'm not qualified to be a judge for 5th Dan exam. So, I'm just giving you advice from just one Kenshi to another.
Yeah.
So that the Suriage is very hard to do. And the moment your opponent is going, I think you sensed him coming, right? That was good. But he went like this.
Yeah.
When people do this, the angle of shiai is coming like that, right? So angle of your suriage is this, and it's quite likely it's coming this angle. So it goes over your shinai, quite likely. Probably that happened then. It looked like he went over your shinai like this.
Yeah. So when I made the technique, for an instant I thought I had him because I felt the two contacts there. Patam. So I knew I'd got contact with the shinai, but at the same time I obviously felt the contact with the men as well. So right away I was, I saw the flags go up, and I just thought, his waza is just stronger in that time.
And he's taller, right?
Yeah, it's quite a tricky technique to get down on a tall opponent because they're coming down kind of over your technique.
Right. And then I think if you wanted to make it successful, you really needed to be more instead of going up. I was kind of too soon. So you have to wait until he gets you up at this moment, about here. And you go, I mean, it's hard. That's why Suriage is very hard. You have to wait for the right moment until you're about here. If you go up too early, probably that happens maybe. So you have to wait until the right moment, which is about here. I think and of course you have to go this way too. I mean, not this way.
That's an interesting point. It's, so the shinai work might have been okay, but there's a lack of tai sabaki.
Yeah, tai sabaki and go foot with contact. Then probably it's always F. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, so. But you could improve, if you want to do Suriage man against especially taller people. Yeah, you want to try to wait until they get you about him instead of going.
Yeah. And your thoughts, Blake?
Yeah, really interesting, Hiro. I've got lots of thoughts, Tristan. It's just trying to pick the one that's going to be the most succinct, because I don't want to go on a weird tangent.
Well, the other thing as well is just remember that although I'm the guinea pig here, and I appreciate your advice for myself, there's the general audience as well. So there might be general points as well. So feel free. I mean, like, there's only 6 of these in total that we're going to look at, and there probably won't be much to say about the last one because it's kind of for giggles. So yeah, whatever you got,
good
we'll
adult,
take
man.
it.
So look, the thing is, like, as a fellow, how tall are you, mate? By the way,
5'9".
Oh, okay. So you're taller than me. So I'm 5'7".
No, 5'7". Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go.
about
So we're
the
about the same. So as a fellow shorty, waza selection, I think, is something that we could chat about here. I probably wouldn't attempt a Suriage waza against a taller opponent, particularly Suriage men. They're going to expect that I'm going to put pressure on the kote, and I'm going to put pressure on the do, and because I will be, you know what I mean, and I will hit your kote, and I will attempt to hit your do, and with that attitude, I step in, and I'll talk a little bit more about the attitude thing in a little bit, but. I step in with that attitude. I'm going to punish your kote. If you give me anything, I will take it. And with that sort of mindset, I guess, and that will manifest in the way I do my same, the way that I move my body and my shinai and things like that. Then I can start to influence where and what types of waza the other person might be doing, and therefore how I respond or how I counter or how I initiate. So what I'm trying to say is that rather than baiting that person for my man, I know he's going to want to hit my man because it'll be an easy target. There'll be a few earlier things where I'm just a little bit lower. And for example, in a grading, I wouldn't want to go out and start with a debana kote. Personally, at a higher level, I probably wouldn't. But what I would do is start with a kote men, for instance, so that if I do get that kote, then that's better than nothing. But I'm setting myself up for the kote men afterwards, and it's a little bit less dangerous is probably not the right word, but let's go with that, to attempt a suriage waza and just get sconned while I was trying to do something. Do you know what I mean? So I'm thinking about the strengths that I have, and that is that I am short and I can reach your kote quite easily, and I can reach your do if I need to. Okay, those aren't ideal shodachi to start your grading with. I get that, but we can start to just, think about it like Jenga, right? You just take a few little blocks out from the person's mind at the start, and they think, oh man, this guy and his bloody lightning speed kote or kote man or, kote do or, whatever it is. And they think, what's he going to do? Then I've got a little bit of a chink in the armor, let's say, that I can start to weave it. And then I would start to put the pressure on, get into my cutting distance and do debana men as much as I could. You know what I mean? So I'm not suggesting to people that they start their grading with a debana kote. If you want to, I don't think there's a problem with that. But at your level, the level that you're attempting, it's that first cut is so important. Like it's the cut to think about, because what you want to do is you want to capture the shinsei, the judges' eyes. You want them to be following you for the rest of it. And if you watch a grading where somebody starts like that and they get a really good point, the judges will watch them for the rest of the thing. You know what I mean? And that's what you want. So the stronger you can get out there and take an ippon earlier, the better. And I think working to your strengths in order to do that is the best place that you can put yourself.
Yeah. It's an interesting point as well that you mentioned where you're talking about, the game of Jenga and pulling the bricks out, which is a lot of times when people go to Shinsa, it's expected that most people you'll end up with like an I-men situation out of the blocks, because everyone kind of just gets soul cut men. And you'd think at the higher levels that would naturally just change to white, pick an appropriate waza for the situation. But inevitably, most people kind of go to their default thing, and they just try to obviously win the timing, win debana, which is fine and fair enough. But so it's part of the skill of Shinsa, in my experience so far, is making the time and space to show your kendo. And something like what you're saying there, where maybe you do select something aside from that men, and so maybe not so contrived. So like Andy has mentioned on his channel a couple of times that it's not always the best idea to start one of these levels of Shinsa with the Kaishido, because it can come off as, it's a question of like, did you really set that waza up, or were they just not kind of fast enough to get through your block? It comes, it's a bit wishy-washy kind of thing, as opposed to say maybe if it was a nukido or something like that, it's like, well, okay, that's a harder waza. Like it's easier to distinguish. Like, okay, you had to work to set that up or something like that. But my point is more that you can kind of break them out of whatever their normal default game plan was going to be from that first waza. And it doesn't have to be a different waza, but maybe you don't even do the first attack. Maybe you just have good control of center, good composure, and show that, just because you went, I didn't, that doesn't mean I'm ready to do that right now. There's several ways to kind of approach that first encounter that somebody may attack, but it's not written in law that you both have to like go together or do the same waza or just cut men. It's a touch shiai. And so this is like some of the advice that I've always had trying to transition through this level is it should flow more like natural touch shiai. So obviously the footage I've brought as well, being shiai practice, is a little bit different in nature. But yeah, for me, this is this kind of thing that plays normally more to my natural strength. So I'm not a massive shiaisha. I've done shiai, but I don't get to do. Being in Northern Ireland, we're quite sort of separated off on our own from the rest of the British Kendo Association. So I don't get as much shiai as other people. So I'm a bit of a slow starter. You'll see in this footage that like I lose the first couple and then I start to hit the stride kind of thing. And I get more into shiai mode. I'm so used to being the coaching person. And as I said, when I do Shinsa, normally I feel like I play to my strengths because I feel like I do more my natural Kendo, if that makes sense, where I'm not like a sort of bouncy, jumpy, particularly flashy guy. But I like the idea of this control of center, of not jumping at the first thing. Somebody goes boom, I don't go yeah, or try not to anyway. But that sometimes for me comes at the expense of becoming, the waiting sword, machiken. Where if I go idle like that, then I'm in a bad spot. And so you'll see in the next one, I think that this is my sort of downfall. It becomes a bit defensive, a bit retreative, if that makes sense, because I'm too busy waiting to see if I still have the same. I've lost the same, if that makes sense. Shall I pop the second one up on the screen and we'll have a go? Okay, let's go. Okay, let's have a go. Okay, so obviously I'm on the left-hand side now. The guy on the right-hand side is Godan as well. He's my dojo mate. He knows my Kendo like the back of his hand.
Oh, that was a man.
So can we, Tristan? Can you pause that? Can you go back, because this is the point that I was making before, right? I got two things to say. Sorry, Hiro, if you had something, but if we could start that again, just play that again. What you've done is essentially what I tried to explain before. There's this sort of, okay, you guys are similar height here, but that's a sort of a uchi-otoshi sort of a thing, right? You've hit his kote or shinai down, and then you've launched him. That's a great first impression. As Hiro reacted, it's like, whoa, that's cool. And inside the shinsei's mind, the judge's mind, they're doing the same thing, because we're all spectating, and we love it. We do a little maru. The thing that you like, if we're going to be picky here, man, and acknowledging that there's a real important contextual difference. This is a shiai. It's not a grading, what we're watching, but we're preparing you, or at least we're guiding you towards, what we think would be good for your grading. But check this out. So you've done something really good. Let's play again, please. So, and then pause when you can. And then pause. So that's a reasonably understandable reaction for someone in a shiai. You've done the kote or the uchi-otoshi kote mem, and you didn't waste time to see if the shimpan put their flags up. You pushed the guy back, and then you did your hikiwaza. And I think, as far as a shiai technique's concerned, that's 100% what you want to be doing.
But I wouldn't be doing that in a Shinsa,
You know what I mean? And the thing is that when I was preparing for my sixth dan, I had the privilege of working with my older brother. And one of the pieces of advice that he gave me that sticks out the most, that I think did the most, it had the most positive impact, was he called it peacocking, right? Do you know what I mean by that analogy, right? So once you hit that first target and you grab the judge's attention, just like Hiro did, whoa, you put your feathers out and you stand your ground and you say, now, pal, you step back into the distance, man, because I'm not, because I own this. I own this little box right now for the next 90 seconds. This is my house. You know what I mean? And so, and this is not in a disrespectful way. Please don't get me wrong. This is not this is not an arrogance in a negative or a detrimental, malicious way. This is hey, look at me and look at what I can do, because I I am a 5th dan. In actual fact, today I'm a 6th dan. But you can give me 5th dan, and I'll be happy with that. This is the sort of the presence I mentioned before about attitude. It's a presence, this sort of peacocking presence that you bring, and that cut is enough. And then you go back, pal, because I ain't.
There's an expression I've heard a lot used, and yeah, it was something I was going to bring up later in the stream, but it's relevant now, so we'll talk about it now. Is people often talk about this, this perception of indomitability, and it starts all the way from your initial A through your Sonkyo, and obviously it's all there through your Chokuso. But what you're talking about here is in this the execution of the technique, the zanshin, the mental
whole
attitude.
Thing, man. Absolutely 100% agree. Yep.
And that's usually the kind of thing that plays much more to my strengths, and it's sometimes why I have some issues in shiai, because I'm too busy going, no, that was my laser. And that guy's like, but the flags didn't go up. Huh?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing today. All right, I'll get on board.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we have a look at how it concludes?
Yep.
Alrighty, let's.
It's like you were saying before, Hiro, right? Like it's not the quantity of strikes that we're looking for in a grading.
Right.
Quality, and it's probably fair to say it's the other way around. In a shiai, you got to get an ippon, and it's good to get an ippon in a grading, of course, but it is. There's more to it, eh? There's more to it than just.
Exactly. That seme here, seme, and you're going, and before you strike, you lift up your shinai pot like that. It's kind of bait, and he reacted to it, and he went like that, and then you go, huh.
Yeah.
That was beautifully done. There you go.
That's a big tick.
That main strike, that's. Or if you give the door to you.
No, I lost this. So they gave him the men.
No, really.
Chimpan's a hard job, man. Don't judge.
It is a hard job, yes.
I'm not judging Shimpan. I'm judging the shiai.
Oh, right.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because when I was editing the video, I was like, hang on a minute. But Shimpan's decision is final. So
I don't know. Like what I said, luckily, because I was cleaning up my room, because after unpacking stuff, and I found this Japanese articles about Shinsa, and I was going over it. And this particular paper is research paper. I don't remember what book it was from, but Edo Sensei, he researched, he did survey on judges. And for 5th dan above, what they are looking at is 100% of judges, they said seme and kikentai no ichi. Right, that's 100% judges are looking for seme and kikentai no ichi for over 5th dan. And that seme that you showed in the video, I think that was spot on. Like, build up tension as you get close, and then you go pop like that, and your opponent reacted to it, and you go pop, you executed excellent kote man strike, more like kote uchi otoshi man. That was perfect timing and great seme, and actually he reacted to your seme clearly. That means your seme worked.
Yeah.
So we can tell that everything you prepared for your execution of technique worked. Everything was good, but again, zanshin. If you go, if you claim, I got you, like I got you, and everyone knows I got I got man, and then probably in shiai too. You have to convince judge referees too, right?
Mhm.
So maybe you could have gotten that match right. I'm not too sure. Yeah, I think
Like
Zanshi,
maybe they
followed
were
by
teetering on the edge, and I could have just given him a little nudge.
Zanshi.
I mean, even the thing is, man, like obviously the flags don't go up in a grading. They, we want them to go up in a shiai, but it really is more to it. And I think, like, at the level that we're talking about, it's important to consider that, though, that what is it that's more, and it's not necessarily the flags going up or the ticks. It's the presence that you can bring. And then, as Hiro said, everybody goes, oh, okay, yeah, he's come to pass today, But what it does as well is it takes another block out of the other person's Jenga mind. And again, no malice intended, but this is a combat. This is a battle, man. And what you're doing with a peacocking thing, and like Hiro said, man, and you take it, you claim it. The other guy's going, wait. No. I can do that. And this is 100% what happens, because it happens to me. I know this happens to other people. You go, oh, shit, I have to catch up. I have to get that back. And all of a sudden, your game plan that you come out with, the card's fallen down. I wanted to get the first point, and then I was going to coast a little bit, and then I was going to do some other stuff. If you take that away from that person just through claiming it, whether you hit the target or not, really,
Right.
Whether it would be scored an ippon or not, if you say that you got it and you believe that you got it, the other guy is going to go, wait a minute, nah, hang on. And so you then, at that point, you take ownership of the whole fight.
Yeah.
Potentially until the tables turn and he does it to you, and that's the game, right? We don't want him to ever get to the point where he's like, aha, I got you back, man. That's not what we want. We want to say, no, I've been half a step ahead of you from the first 3 seconds. And that's the attitude. That's the game. And so one of the things that I was going to say, as we go through looking at the techniques in your waza choice, I remember when my older brother passed his 7th dan, and I was taking the footage and
you were doing that.
Yeah. And none of us expected the result. It was amazing. Like, it was, with respect, like, my brother was he was pleasantly surprised as well. We were all, because it doesn't happen on the first go, right? Very often. Anyway, we were having a conversation with somebody afterwards who also passed, a female Kenshi, and the discussion was about whether or not Alec used patterns. If he had a set plan in mind where he was going to use these patterns or these game plan. And his approach was, no, man, I'll take it as it comes. Like, when the strike comes, I'll respond, or I'll set it up, or, you have no idea what the other person's going to do. This other Kenshi was convinced that sticking to the game plan and these execution of techniques in this particular order was what got her across the line. And my brother was the complete opposite. So there's both to consider there. But I think I would probably err on the side of, I'll take it as it comes. The preparation has been done. I have no idea what is going to be the most effective. And therefore, this is why I keep banging on about the attitude, right? Because that is the thing that's squarely in your control. Doesn't matter what the other person does. You are 100% in charge of your response and the attitude that you bring to it. And so my advice for, you're preparing for your 5th dan and above, at least the way that I, can the way I've done it, is to focus on not on what waza I'm doing and what waza I'm not going to do. It's, hey, I'm here, I'm present, I'm going to start picking out these Jenga blocks out of this person's mind, and I'm going to beat them in presence. I'm going to peacock the hell out of this guy, and I'm going to make sure that the judges know what my number is. You know what I mean? And so that, I place myself on the page. So it's like, the thing is, like, you can work and try and think, okay, these waza work really well in a grading, or these waza work really well in a shiai. I think that there might be merit in that while you prepare. When you get there on the day, what is it that you want to showcase? You're a coach. Here we go. Here's the kendo coach aspect, right? You're a coach. Your students are going to be watching you do this. What do you want them to take away from watching you? They sit back and they go, man, Tristan's grading, that was spectacular. Like he really dominated in terms of, I don't know what it might be, man. Like the way that he stood, the presence, the shiai, the movements, the sharpness, or whatever it is that you want to showcase to your students. That would be the attitude, how you frame the attitude that you bring to your grading. Because like I say, you can't really predict with any great confidence what waza are going to work in that moment. You just don't know.
Masahiro Sensei made a really good distinction between the two sort of ways of approach, how you approach shiai, how you approach shinsa. And he said, shinsa is a job interview. So it's about the whole package. You're selling the whole package. Shiai is like, you're there to win in a nutshell. I know we sort of talk about that. The winning isn't everything because it's one form of testing in your kendo, and you need several different kinds of forms of testing for you to keep that progression going in a healthy way. But yeah, I thought his description was really apt because he's like, what do you do in a fight, right? You turn up and you win. Like if you have to throw a rock at them or whatever, So obviously within kendo, it's within the rule set, but you'll do what you got to do, kind of thing. But with the shinsa, it's you turn up in your best suit with your tie tied the best it can be. You freshen your breath. You carry yourself well. All that kind of thing. Your manners are good. You're courteous. All these kinds of things. And it's not just about answering the questions, which is like, once you've bowed and you stand up from Sonkyo, that's like the portion where you're like answering their questions. So I just thought that was a really good analogy for what you do in a shinsa. It sort of leans into some of the points you were making.
For sure.
Right, shall we take a look at another?
Yep.
Hopefully I'll start winning.
You won that one.
Yeah. But it's not important, is it?
No.
It's the attitude. Wow. That's what
Exactly.
Okay. Third match. Okay, so there's another loss. Let's take a look. This opponent, I think, he was the strongest guy on the day. He's on the Irish national squad as well. And you can see I get this quite defensive thing. So if I get somebody who's really, really, really proactive and explosive, instead of standing my ground, I'm starting to retreat a bit more than I would want.
Oh,
there's an easy fix for that, Tristan. But I've talked a bit too much. Hiro, do you go first, man?
you go. It's okay, mate. You go. It's all right. Talking is your job.
Well, yeah, I guess it is. Too bad I don't do it well. Tristan, when you start moving back like that, again, shiai, different context, right? So let's be really clear on that. You obviously you don't want to be stepping back in a shiai. So the easiest thing for people to do in a situation like this, when you've got someone who's very, very forward, they're coming at you and you're not, let's say you're not ready yet, or the opportunity isn't clear to you yet, or whatever the case is. All we really need to do, and I wish I could sort of show you this better, but I'll put my hands up into the camera. If we aim the kensen, our kensen, at the other person's thumb, their right thumb that's on the top of their shinai, terrible chudan, we aim it here, and it's almost like riding, noru, right? We hear that a lot in Japanese dojo. They noru, go over the top or ride it. When the person comes at you, if we can step to the side and ride the shinai over, the kensen goes over and points at their thumb, that's the target, then what that allows us to do is with well-timed execution is to take the wind out of their sails in that moment. And that's fine, because that's job done. But what it does again is it puts you in this area, this space where it's like, no, man, this is my house. I told you that before, right? And so we carry on with the attitude. It's like, yeah, okay, I can see grasshopper that you want to strike, and I understand. There's this confidence that you can bring when you defend by stepping to the side and riding over the top of their shiai and taking the wind out of their sails in that respect, because that means that you're not being defensive. And I can see people doing this in shiai. Doesn't bother me. I don't, that's perfectly fine. There's a lot at stake here. It doesn't matter if you get hit in a grading. It does matter if you get hit in a shiai. That's a really important distinction. So this might not work and they might get through, but hey, you get hit in the grading. So what? You're still showing that you're in charge. Okay, you got lucky one through. That's cool, but I'm not fussed. I've got my composure. I've got my confidence. And as soon as I said, bang, there it is. I took it, and then you're back. You're back in the judge's line of sight. So again, it's about how we can be defensive with an attitude or a display of confidence. And I think stepping to the side and going over the top is a really good way to do that.
There's another point I think that you touch on there, which is, and I think it becomes really evident, and when we talk about this arc where you set off progressing to, you make the shift to Godan, and you're starting to progress on from there, is this realization that the center line, when you start Kendo, you think the center line is this magical line straight down the middle, but it's a dynamic, living, breathing thing that isn't necessarily this straight line. It's, it's dynamic. It's kind of just offset from those areas, but it's very much dependent on what's really happening in real time, the character of the person in front of you, the form that they're in that day. So like that second opponent, like I said, he's my dojo mate. We're the two Yondans in our dojo. We're the highest ranked people in the dojo. And so it can, as you can imagine, it can become a bit stalematey in our interactions sometimes. So we have to sort of try to work to keep things fresh and different. Luckily enough, he's good that way. He always brings something new to the table. So if I have a good keiko against him one week, he'll come with a new bag of tricks, and it sort of goes back and forth that way, and we kind of push each other forward.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those things I've really realized is you can buy yourself time to study your opponent if you can stay calm and basically move in the fashion that you're talking about. It's shiai, it is harder. It is harder because, even if they get a hit and you think that's not enough for an ippon, doesn't matter whether you think it's enough for an ippon. It's how it comes off across the judges at the end of the day. Right. So like you said, there's a lot to risk in that situation. Whereas if it's in Shinsa, there's a different element to that. As you say, you can just go there and have that mindset of, probably the best advice I ever got told about how to approach Shinsa is just go there and do what you feel is your best kendo. Just go there and go, this is me. This is my kendo. This is how I do it, kind of thing. Whereas shiai, you can really be humbled like that. I'm going to just do my kendo. Pop. Oh, yeah. So, well, that's the game.
Yeah.
You get some reality checks in shiai. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, but probably it's just a different nature. The shiai, you can do your own kendo as well, but if you get hit, you lose. You know what I mean? So you have to change the mindset a little bit. You can do your kendo. My kendo should be straight. You can do straight kendo, but even if you're strong, your kendo is straight, you don't want to get hit in Shinsa, either, basically. So the nature-wise, you go out there for shiai, you get hit, you lose, no more shiai for you for the day. The Shinsa, you get hit, but it's okay. You still have a chance. The passing, the grade is your goal. So it's a different nature, but you can still do the same thing. So if you train your kendo strong for shiai and strong for shinsa, that's the best.
Pokemon Gossip says, thanks for the peacocking analogy. We'll remember that one.
There you go.
That's my biggest secret, man. Like it's gone now, but but the thing is that these things are a performance, right? So my job, my paid job, one day it'll be YouTube, hopefully, but in the meantime, as a lecturer at a university, I obviously I don't go into my classes and peacock around. That's not what it is. But it is a performance. It is when I finish, like I'm pretty buggered, and just after a lecture, and it's because we have to perform, and it's the same thing when we coach, and I believe at your level, Tristan, it's again the same thing. You're going out there to demonstrate, what kind of kendo, like Hiro's been saying, what kind of kendo do you want to demonstrate, and there's an element of that confidence that really needs to come through. I think that you want to show students, no one's sort of being timid here, and it's like, this is a fight. This is a combat sport. We'll get into that sport thing another episode, but it's a combat activity, and therefore we need to sort of show that presence coming through. So whatever it is, it ends up being the technique that you execute and get a point or not. Your presence there is the thing that you want to demonstrate to the judges and also to your students, I think.
Right. So the peak. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The peacock analogy is from the beginning. When you bow, you have to own the space.
Yeah.
So you have to already have all the tails opened up, and this is my place.
Yeah.
This is my space. This is my house.
Mm-hmm.
Don't come in with your shoes on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse when you see two people ray and one of them just sort of drops down to Sonkill and the other one's like, no.
Yeah.
My own time, not contrived, but just like nice, really beautiful Sonkill. And the other person sort of like landed on their bum like a heap.
Right.
You're like, oh, there's two different things happening here already.
And some eighth sensei won't let you sit down before that. Yeah.
See, but to me, like that's an excellent thing to say, I think.
Well, there you go.
Hello.
Hi, welcome,
Can
Andy.
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I figured something important
thought
happened.
Thought it was tomorrow, not today.
Andy.
I'm really sorry about that.
Oh my god.
It's been a bit manic for me
I
recently.
don't take back the nasty things I said about you then.
I'm going to rewind and watch it, mate. How are you all doing, guys? Everybody
Good,
okay?
mate. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I made a joke that you were just trying to get that one last box of Bogu out there.
No, it's been a manic day since the start. So I don't know if it's my bad. I'm really sorry.
Not a problem.
What have I missed? Fill me in.
Groundbreaking stuff, man. We've solved it. We've solved it.
Oh, real cool. So Tristan was supposed to roast you, right? So you suck, yeah?
Yeah, we've already had a controversial decision from Shinpon.
Have we?
Yeah. Controversial decision. We've talked about must-have treats from Japan that you just can't live without, that you really miss. Stuff that you can't import and get a hold of.
Yeah.
You're like, I could really fancy that right now. And what else do we talk about? Age in relation to passing Godan.
Okay.
And you guys all were reasonably, compared to the normal context, I guess, around these parts anyway, we're quite young passing the Godan. I suppose that's fair to say. So I'll be 39 attempting it. But I'm not over the hill by any stretch of the imagination, but I certainly like to be... Yeah, I remember because
so young.
Andy was on my panel for Yondan.
I was, wasn't I? I was, yeah. It's so great.
Yeah. And that second opponent, the guy who's my dojo mate, he was my first opponent.
Okay.
And I had made a decision in my head that I was like, I'm going to try and upset the apple cart and be really, really like active, because normally he expects me to be very controlled. And that turned out to be a bad game plan, because I tried to beat him at his own game, and he's faster and springier than me. Basically, he's like an elastic band, right? He could just throw himself around the place. His day will come. But anyway, so it wasn't going well. Andy was going to fail me until near the end, where I sort of did a Waza where he was like, still teetering on the edge, not a bad finish, and then my next opponent, my first Waza out of the block was a straight man up the middle, and their shinai went flying in the air, and he was like, okay.
I remember that.
But yeah, he came and gave me a talking to afterwards. You have no idea how close you were.
I was saying that to keep you on your toes, man.
Yeah. It's good. That's why I brought you guys on here, because, well, obviously, you're not so far away from where I am in my Kendo journey, where it's like, it's like I liken my channel to being like, if I've got advice for beginners, think of me as like that senpai type guy. So if you're practicing somewhere where you don't have access to that kind of network, or maybe you haven't built that kind of core to your dojo, I can be like your local friendly senpai and just kind of tell you some kind of basic bread and butter things that are going to kind of get you up and running and keep you on the right track until you can get around, travel and meet some people and get out there and experience it on a larger platform. But you guys are like those kind of figures to me, because you're heading on now, because you're gonna hit the big leagues soon, right? But yeah, which is another question I've got for you later. I'll show you some more Ippon, and I'll come back to that, the whole seventh and then beyond. But the point is, although I've seen your stern side, Andy, but you are also fantastically approachable and
stern side.
Yeah. Well, let's just say I saw someone putting on a tare in a less than desirable way at a seminar that got a bit of a dressing down for that. I won't mention names.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay, so I've played a couple of Ippon Shobu footage already. Ones where I lost. I think it's three ones, and I lost. But like I said, one of them we have decided was a controversial decision. So I'm going to move on, and I'll just play the next one, and then we'll jump in and talk about it.
Okay.
But basically, what I was, the whole point of this is kind of that overarching journey. So I want anyone who's tuning in to, if they've maybe passed third and they're looking at, what is fourth Dan Kendo and beyond going to be like. So it's kind of that fourth, fifth, and even on to sixth. So you might have somebody who's just passed their fifth, and they're really keen to hear from you guys, like, that kind of thing. So, so while I've got you, I'll stick the screen up and let's have a crack and see what the next one has. Okay. So this was a Ippon Shobu, like shiai practice at a seminar in March. So it's pretty current for my Kendo.
This year, yeah?
Yeah. But I've already taken something very important away from it. So this is the first opponent, okay? So he's Godan for some years now. You might know him, Andy. Jason Clouston.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I'll get some volume on here.
You're facing the camera, right?
Yeah. This one goes on for a bit, guys. So if you want to get a cup of tea or
So he's a big dude, eh?
He is a big fella, actually, yeah.
You say he's fifth Dan?
Yeah, he's fifth down already. Yeah, has been for a few years.
Is the same the first guy? No, you fought at the very beginning. No, is a different guy.
He's the first opponent that I faced. Yeah,
Oh.
where I lost the Suriage.
Right.
It's interesting, because I mean we've made this distinction already, like the difference between a grading and a shiai, obvious. But you know how that manifests in what you do, Tristan, versus in the shiai versus what you do in the grading. It matters what he's doing as well, right? Like there's going to be more attacks coming at you because the goal is for him to get an ippon on you, just like it is for you to him in this context. But like if we were watching a mock grading, for example, I would think that we'd have some very, very different movements, some different waza selection choices. And Andy, just before you came on, we were talking about the concept of peacocking. Once we, well, Hiro's point was from the moment we bow in, my point was more concentrated on once we hit something, and really, really owning the space and saying, this is my house. And there's no space, or it's not no space, but there's perhaps less space to do that in a shiai because you can spend 5 seconds peacocking while you're getting hit, right? But in a grading, it's probably a little bit more opportunity to do that, and it possibly has a little bit more impact in terms of grabbing the judge's attention and whatever. So like that's an important contextual difference to keep in mind when we're looking at Tristan's stuff, obviously. So it'd be, that would be the ideal. But like a couple of things that we've talked about. What are you trying to do in that fight, Tristan? Like, what's your you beat? This guy hit you in the first one. Have you come back with a different intention or a different strategy in this next one?
Little bit. So, like I said, I feel like I'm quite a slow starter. When it comes to shiai, I have trouble shifting gears from the way I like to coach. And Shinsa, like I said before, kind of plays to my wheelhouse of so if I go in there and I just do my own kendo, I usually do better, right? Rather than getting caught up in somebody else's kendo. And when I make mistakes, it's usually because I try to compete. Start doing their kendo rather than doing my own. So this time when I came in, it was, I wasn't too bothered about my first interaction with him, to be honest, because I knew that when I made him take that man, that, I'd picked a reasonably good waza selection, and it came when I wanted it to, and it was what I wanted him to do when I wanted him to. So on the second interaction, I didn't go in there going, I need to drastically change my game, because I was like, I think I can get through here, and I think I'm roughly on the right track here to get through. And so Andy, I was saying to the guys earlier that Jason's mode of kendo, obviously he's had some significant leg injuries and things like that. So he's kind of like similar kind of kendo style, I suppose you would say, to myself, where it's like he likes to have that composure, very kind of indomitable kind of thing is his presentation. Likes to control the center, go in his own time. Young guys throwing themselves at him, and he'll pick his moment. He's like, no, I'll go when I want to go, kind of thing. So I knew going into that using the kind of kote men as a uchi toshi to open the men is a bankable waza. And I just wanted to pick the moment where I felt he was overprotecting that center line. And that's what I felt. But at first, when I executed that waza, I wasn't sure I'd succeeded, because it was actually quite a clunky thing, because when you run into him, he's quite an awkward guy to get off of. He's big, So I remember hitting him and thinking, this is awkward. I'm kind of getting clashy in here. But, obviously, you start seeing people's hands go up. So I was like, okay, fine, I've got that. But, yeah.
It looked like a good ippon to me.
Yeah, it's just one of those things when when you're feeling it, you expect that sensation of kind of feeling a way through, and I didn't get that. I felt like I was getting caught up in it, but hands went up. So, and it's one of those things I can see that from the outside. So like when I'm watching the ippon analysis, like stuff that you're doing on your channel, Andy, I can see that kind of thing. And to me, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Just watching it from the outside, but being in the interaction and feeling an awkward kind of clash where it doesn't quite come off smoothly. you start to get that doubt in your mind of whether or not you were in control, or did they still have that degree of composure where you didn't quite piece that together. So yeah, it wasn't one where I expected to win the judges, but I'm glad it did. And also at that point, you'll notice Sensei came over to have a look at the group. So he's doing Shimpan as well. So so the fact that it was unanimous as well, I was like, okay, right, cool, fair, like that, pleased with that.
Good.
Shall we take a look at another, or have we got some more points we want to look at or raise on?
Do it, man.
Let's
let's
go.
be on.
Okay. So I've got one more win in my bag, and this time it's against another Godan from Irish side. So let's take a look here. So here I get more active with my feet, like I'm starting to get into the shiai zone a bit now, and I'm becoming a bit more dynamic. Trying to keep them guessing a bit more. And I'm starting to already think to myself, don't back off as much as you were doing earlier in the day, Take it to them a bit more.
Tristan, that little bit there, keep going, but we were talking just before Andy came on, we were talking about that defense strategy, that riding over the top, pointing at the right thumb. Do you think that would be helpful against an opponent like this?
Certainly employ that. I give that a go in my keiko. But yeah, I'd rather be moving forward and proactively at the end of the day. Because it looks like when you backpedal like that, even if you stop them, at the end of the day, you're just giving them more opportunities to get themselves together and to kind of retake the initiative, aren't you?
So, like, for me, this is a really great example of the difference, because both of you in this one, like, I don't know your kendo. This is the first time I'm seeing it, right? But I get the impression that both of you are very, very eager to score a point. And why wouldn't you be? This is a shiai. But the point that I was trying to make before, like, this, I expect that would be, the urgency would be, it would manifest in a very different way. If this was, if there was a group of 5 or 6 people sitting at a table with a white tablecloth on it, on the side of the screen, like the urgency wouldn't, it wouldn't be so apparent. There'd be a hell of a lot more patience and deliberation and purpose and so on.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And I think clearly you know that. And I guess, as I said before, for me, it's less about, it's great to get this feedback for you and for others, I'm sure, about, whether was a selection and things like that. But really, for me, it's one of those things that you just cannot control. What was it is he going to do? Yeah, you can influence it by semiing at this point or that point or moving in this direction or whatever. But at the end of the day, what he or she decides to do is quite difficult to predict, right? And so, again, it's more about your the way in which you can demonstrate a presence or your purpose and your I am this grade. I'm actually a couple of grades higher than this, to be honest. I'm just here today to sit my 5th dan and giving that impression across, because at the end of the day, you've got to stick in their mind. Probably even more so in those gradings, like in Japan, where there's hundreds of people sitting the same thing. You really need to stick out. When we're a little bit more local and regional, it's like, I know Tristan can do better than this. My issue now is do I take that subjective hat off and try and look for some objectivity? It's a really difficult thing to do, but it is reality. You know, let's not bullshit. You know, we sometimes we do that as judges. Actually, I shouldn't say we. I should say I. So it'd be an interesting question for Andy. Like,
I think it's natural, isn't it?
I think so,
You know,
man. Yeah.
It's a bit like you know, when you're you know, say you're like doing Shimpan even at a local level, and you know that, for example, like one side is maybe fourth or fifth dan, the other side could be just Ikkyu or Shodan. If they and you know that information beforehand, sometimes it influences you when you maybe it shouldn't, but it, you know, sometimes you can't help it. You know that he's or you know, maybe this side's a Ikkyu Shodan, this side maybe he or she's a Godan Rokudan even, and this side, the lower side, manages to hit an okay kote, but for them to hit the okay kote on this grade is a big deal. And you know, without that prior knowledge, you probably wouldn't award that point, but you know, with that in mind, which you shouldn't really use, or, you know, and in the strictest sense, you know, you can't help but not. But then that's why we use humans to judge things like that in Kendo, isn't it? It's kind of it's not why, but it's part of the process of doing so, right? So it is a natural part of it.
For me, like with that as the premise, you know, like we are human and we are influenced, and we are subjective in our observations of people. Like from your point of view, Tristan, and for others watching this, like that seems to me to be something that you should take advantage of, insofar as you're like, okay, I'm familiar with Sensei X, Y, and Z on the panel here. Okay, they know what I can do. Today, I'm going to really show them that what they saw of me last month is, you know, man, I'm a different man. You know, like I've put in some work, and you know, I'm here, I'm present, because you can leverage off that and go, oh man, Tristan, you've really put the work in, and I'm impressed. In comparison to old Bill over there, perhaps, you know, there's a slight difference, and Bill was a little bit, you got a few more points or whatever, but man, you've made some really good improvements, and that could be the difference in getting you across the line. End of the day, you become the grade. I believe you become the grade. You get awarded fifth dan, you'll become fifth dan later on. You'll be a fifth dan when you go for your sixth dan. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree with that entirely as well.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, leverage off these subjective things, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's a big long journey. The best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time, right? And Kendo is one giant elephant, right? And so you just have to take those little bits as you can. However, like I said to you, man, I passed my fifth dan purely because I was good at folding hakama. I truly believe that was a lucky weekend, but I eventually filled the tubby and convinced more people to grade me higher. But you know, it's a part of that attitude and that subjective nature of what we do.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think you should try and shy away.
Pouring beers had a bit of an influence.
Yeah, true. Yeah, exactly.
That way.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, man. Yeah.
Right. Well, rather than go on to, because the last point was, as I say, was just kind of for giggles, really. It was just somebody cutting a hickey man, rolling on their backside, and basically going through a row of chairs and everyone having a good laugh at my expense, because I conceded the hickey man. Would you love to?
Yeah.
Well, you don't really see him hit the chairs. He just goes out of frame, but I'll play it for you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Kendo bloopers.
This is basically
There's a channel idea. There's a channel idea.
Yeah. I have to pay the guy for the submission.
Yeah.
I like to think I made him work for it. That's how I let myself sleep at night. I don't think it takes too long, but I think I did a bit better in this match. So he was the guy who he was the hardest opponent from earlier. So I was a bit more proactive with my footwork against this guy. He's really dynamic, explosive.
Do you have a lot of luck with tsuki in your general training, Tristan?
Here and there. I'm better when I've had like a bit of chance to do kion that day with it, if that makes sense. Then I'll tend to be kind of dialed in. But if I'm going from cold, not so much. But what I do find is I can really disrupt people's rhythm quite a lot because they don't. There it is.
Oh, it's gone. Oh,
It's
you look
gone.
happy. Yeah.
Let's get a round of applause.
But yeah, what I find is if I've got somebody where they're really, really getting their rhythm right, and I'm like, this is going their way, kind of thing. And I get a moment where they'll kind of settle at the center line a bit at a reasonably close my. Sometimes I'll send one as a bit of, even if I'm not sure if it's going to stick, I'll sometimes send it as a warning shot. I remember doing that too. Who was it now? It was somebody reasonably high graded, but they were cool with ski, if that made sense. So I wasn't going to offend anyone. But I remember doing it. No, it was actually fifth dan. That's right. It was in a shiai. Yeah. I'm trying to think of his name. But I was probably Sandan at the time. Anyway, but yeah, I remember sending the ski, and it went like, and it was like the Matrix. It was like that. It was like, and I remember him doing this. He had the time, right? He had the time to look and go. And then, of course, he proceeded to destroy me. but it was a really nice like moment in the shiai, and then afterwards he came and like shook my hand. It was like that was nice choice of words at that point. I felt like I was like, yeah, okay, warning shot, message received. Up my game kind of thing. So yeah, you can get two reactions. You can get, I feel like for me, when I use it, I can disturb their rhythm if I don't get the ippon. But I have taken ippon with ski, but it's I usually try and keep it for special occasions. But on that case, I'll admit there was a little bit of desperation for he's fastest guy, and I just want to stop him like advancing whenever he pleases. So I'm just going to send a little warning torpedo across his bow. Didn't work.
That's a really good point there to unpack. I think ski's one thing, right? And ski's a really advanced technique, particularly katate ski to try and thing. But like as long as people are trying to glean things out of this conversation about preparation for their grading, I think that word that you used is key here, the desperation. When things aren't going well, or you go, okay, of the 90 seconds approximately that I've had, I don't think I've landed anything that's going to wow people. I've tried to peacock. I've tried to do this. When you go into that state of desperation, it's so obvious. You know what I mean? Yeah. And again, it's like the decision that you have to make, I think, is right. Well, what's more important here? Do I have to try and get an ippon because that's going to help me pass, or do I continue to show composure in the face of, a stronger opponent? And whatever decision you make, like if it was me, it would come down to who's watching me and what sort of thing do I want to show? And my role as a coach in this club, or I don't want to portray that. It shows a bit of a weakness in my mindset or whatever it is. However you rationalize it, I think it's something to think really carefully about. If you're not getting the ippon, or you didn't get the ippon that you wanted in your grading, do you panic, or do you take a different approach or a different attitude to it? And I think, I'm not suggesting that there's an answer, but I think it's worthwhile thinking about that when we're fighting somebody and we go, oh, this isn't working the way that I'd hoped. How am I going to react? Because it is so very clear to the people watching you if you start throwing things out in desperation.
Yeah. So just viewers' comments there. So Pokemon Go saying, you'd mentioned to Andy, do you adjust your criteria for ippon according to the grade, i.e. awarding an ippon easier at Mudansha Championship?
So I got asked this question earlier today, actually, at practice I was at. So I think it really depends on the context, first of all, of what the situation is. If it's like the Kyusha Taikai, like a Mudansha Taikai, something like that, yes, you have to adjust the criteria for the Yuko Datotu, because otherwise no one's going to score the ippon, and then that's not going to be a very good shiai. And to some extent you have to do it a bit in in other tournaments too, especially if you can gauge that the two players are of a certain ability or not, and especially let's say it's an individual tournament, it's going to go into Endure. Some point in the match has got to finish. Do you know what I mean? So there has to be an element of that. Obviously as a general rule, the criteria for Yuko Datotsu is an objective standard, but you've got to work within the remit of what you're working with, right? In for there to be a shiai at all, otherwise no one's going home, And it's not fun either, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's like when I used to referee for like the Tegakunen kids in Japan. They're like 6, 7, 8 years old. They can't make ippon on each other. They just, I mean, some of the really good ones can, but the most part, some of them start doing Kendo these days. Start doing shiai these days after they've been doing Kendo for like 3 months. So, it gets to the point where, look, if they manage to hit the other one's bogu, you give the ippon to kind of encourage them a bit as well. Let them have a feeling of what it's like to score the ippon in shiai. So yeah, I think you have to adjust it as you go along a bit to some extent.
Cool. By the way, anyone who's watching, if you want to start popping questions in the comments, do go ahead now, because we're kind of heading towards wrapping this up. I've got a couple of questions for my guests. So something I wanted to ask you, Andy. There's actually 2 questions I wanted to ask you while you're in. One is just from, because I've worked in wholesale import and manufacturing and stuff like that. So I was wondering, like, how much flexibility did you have when you originally set off to start Kendo Star in terms of like the customizations that you wanted to do, the vision that you had? Did you have the full freedom to do that have that expression, or was it something where it took time to kind of build the business up, bring the orders up, and then workshops were like, oh yeah, we'll do more of that for you? Because I imagine
You asking me how to start a Kendo business?
No, it's just a personal interest because I know how hard that game can be, right? Because you go to somebody and you say, here, I like this product.
Yeah,
but could you just move the button here?
No,
if you order 30,000.
No, right. Like I was quite lucky in the beginning. When I first started up, we started in Japan. We worked out of Japan for the first 2 years of the business, actually. And in the very beginning, everything was only made to order, and it was quite high priced stuff. I think it started at about £1,000 a set. It was only high grade stuff in the very beginning. And I was working with the Kendoga Workshop of Japan, Nihon Kendoga Seisakusho. I was working with those guys, who we still work with now. For sort of high grade stuff made in Japan, made to order. So because everything's made to order, I could make it to my own sort of specification, as it were. And then so we did that for a couple of years. And then as we started getting more and more, momentum, we started out in the very beginning with stuff that was other manufacturers' stock that we would sort of buy in and then sell on. And that only lasted about 4-5 months, I guess, just after we first came to the UK. And then I just bit the bullet, took out a loan, bought a load of designed my own borg set, took it to the workshop that we work with, and got them to make a sort of minimum order at that point, and then that was it, and then that's all we've done since then.
Cool. Look, if any of you need to head on, like I know, Blake, you've got your kid there, and if you need to head on or anything like that, don't let me keep you if you've got to go, Blake. So next question I was going to ask, so that one wasn't pre-written, I just added that one in. I'd been thinking about it during the day. But the one I really wanted to ask while you were on that I had planned was basically, what was your thoughts on the standard of shiai at the EKC? Obviously, you had the vantage point of being Shinpan. So obviously, congratulations. It's a big honor.
This question.
So, well, I guess, you know,
Something you don't want to talk
viewing
about,
it,
right?
You know, what can I say other than it's good? Like, I can't exactly say it's trash, right? It's not.
I guess
It's
what I'm
trash.
saying is, in terms
I
of
wouldn't say
development,
it's not. I'm just joking when I say that, just before somebody clips that.
I mean, it's more as a case of development. Like, and who do
Yeah, I
you think?
understand what you mean.
Who are you talking about? Like, looking at as like the real movers shakers. Obviously, we know who the sort of winners were.
Yeah.
But did anyone catch your eye where you went, "Hey, you know, those guys have like put some graft in. They've like leveled up and obviously put some good management or whatever. I've noticed their players just suddenly, yeah, they're in the mix. You know, that kind of thing."
Yeah. So look, I think the overall standard of European Kendo, I think it's on the whole, it's on the up. It's very sort of turbulent though in lots of ways. What you have, and it's you have a sort of interesting like generational turnover with European teams often. Some countries have got very, very good infrastructure, like France, for example, where you have senior members of the team who have been on the team for over a decade, they've been there for a long time, and they've got new blood coming up, and it kind of works like a conveyor belt. Like they kind of go up, the young ones move up, and the next ones come in, and then you have others that you sort of have a team, and then they all start out as a team when they're in the 20s, and they play until they're old men, and then they're all gone, and then you've got a new group of young lads, or girls in some respects. It's to be honest, I think a lot of the women's teams are more like that than. Well, I don't know actually. It's hard to say, but
I know what you mean, though, where it's like they have to like start from scratch again.
Yeah, so you'll have a team that could be very, very strong, but then once several of their sort of very experienced, very accomplished players suddenly retire and they start a new team, they're almost starting back again. And even though they've got a good base, it's a clear step back in terms of how the team is sort of moving. I think one of the biggest things that we struggle with in Europe, compared to, let's say, Japan, obviously, but probably other countries as well, is I think that there is one of the great things about the European Championships is there's a junior division for youngsters 16, 17 years old. But I think the number of those kids that move on into the adult division after that is quite low. So I think that there's probably some work that could be done to develop those sort of young players that are sort of 18, 19, that maybe it's difficult for them to move into their adult team because it's already full of guys who might be in their mid to late 20s or whatever. So they could lose interest and drop off. It seems to be a bit of a pattern. I think as well, I'd like to see like a girls juniors as well. At the moment, it's a mixed juniors, so the girls and the boys are in together, and I think that's really, really difficult. I think it would be nice to see a separate category for the boys and girls separately to encourage more of the girls to come through. I say that I'm a bit biased because I've got a 15-year-old daughter, but it's difficult for her to mix it with 17-year-old lads. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it'd be nice to sort of see that so that we could see that development pass on. There are teams that have made massive leaps forward. There's teams that like sometimes you wouldn't necessarily expect. Maybe 10 years ago or so when I was competing, there were teams that were like new teams in those days. Teams like North Macedonia, Greece. Greece, it wasn't a new team, but like Greece right now is they're really good. I think one of the teams I was most impressed with was Sweden. Sweden, their Kendo has really picked up. I think they've got a great coaching and management team there, between Jun, who's a former competitor. He was competitor from my days. You've got Arai-san, who's absolute awesome, really, really great guy, who's their men's coach, I think, and then Kate as well. Kate Sylvester's got involved with that too. So I think they've got a really good structure, and I really saw an improvement in those guys. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously going up, but it's not. In the old days, like when we were playing, it was like, right, okay, well, the winner's going to be one of these teams, or the top three is probably going to be a combination of this. It's not really like that so much anymore. I mean, Poland are on fire as well. I mean, you know, there's so many. You just don't know which way it's going to go. So that's a great thing in itself. You know, there's still big gaps between some of the European teams, though, and some of the really successful international teams. Obviously, Japan, Korea, sort of out in front to some extent, but some of the others as well. Where I think there's still a gap to bridge. But you know, I think it's sort of getting there slowly and slowly. Last couple of World Championships, we've seen sort of European teams do really, really well. So, you know, it's all good.
My next question is for Blake, which is, you know, obviously you bring a lot of scientific backing to your kind of coaching principles. And I was just wondering if there's any, like, kind of, you know, what would you, if there's one kind of big scientific takeaway, it could be a philosophy, like a guiding philosophy that you bring to, because I know you're the go-to guy, right, for sporting pedagogy, right, in New Zealand. You're like the guy, right? But what is it that you bring into Kendo? It might be universal across your disciplines, but is there one big kind of thing where, you know, I'm going to leave you with this? Yeah, this is what I'm about, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, man. By the way, Andy, that's really interesting hearing about what's going on in Europe, man. It's exciting, eh? Yeah, look, I mean, in terms of coaching, I think the biggest breakthrough. It's the thing that drives me in my research and with Kendo Coach and the discussions that I have with people, and you know, the seminars that I run and things like that is basically around acknowledging the different socio-cultural influences that we have outside of Japan. Let's say. I mean, there's other big Kendo nations there, but primarily the biggest influence we have, right, is what they do in Japan, and therefore that must be what we should be doing. And I think that it's fair to say that there'll be, for sure, an element of that. You know, there's tried and true methods, and we shouldn't be throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. There's some really important insights, obviously, that we can take from the way that Japanese clubs train. But I think that it's important to remember that a lot of the influence that we see, you can go in almost any dojo in the world, and you'll start off with a circle, everybody doing a warm-up in Suburi, Ichi, Sanshi, Gorokushi, Chachi. And then we do Kirikaishi, 5 men, 5 kote, 5 dons. And, you know, so it's a pretty familiar sort of a thing. But, you know, there's a certain origin point of that style of training, and we've taken that model and we've used that outside of Japan and in our respective regions and countries. And as I said earlier in the stream, like I don't think that that's a terrible thing, but I think that there are other ways that we can skin this cat, and that requires us to be really mindful of the needs and the expectations of the people that we're coaching outside of Japan, right, or Korea, or wherever you look as the alma mater, right? But the key thing for us in terms of a breakthrough, I think, is to consider, well, how do we meet those needs and expectations where, we're not constantly barking orders top down, but providing people to express their why. Why are you here? What do you want to get out of Kendo? And importantly, how can I facilitate that? Right. And I think that there's a real, and, you know, I probably don't need to unpack it terribly much. People understand, you know, you've got the sensei, this idea of the sensei, and whatever he or she says, we do. And sensei's on the drum, and then sensei jumps in for jigeko at the end and says something really esoteric at the end, and we have to try and decipher that ourselves. It doesn't need to be that way all the time. And again, just going back to the point that I made, there will be people in the dojo that want that. Those are their expectations. And so that's again, really important for us to go, okay, got it. So Andy's the type of person that requires like a really clear, decisive instruction. And I need to be really clear with him and send him away and get him to do that. And he loves a bit of hard yakka. He's really, he's really likes to get his teeth stuck in. Hiro, on the other hand, he's the sort of person that really sort of wants to reflect. He's a bit more critical about it. He's gone through an education system that encourages him to think why, as we discussed. And I need to be mindful of that as well. Not one size fits all. And so I think that in terms of what we can do, and you see what's the biggest breakthrough. I don't think this is a breakthrough yet. This is what I'm trying to break through, is that we can and should be coaching in a way that meets the people's needs and expectations. And that's not always going to be the way that Sensei does it back home. That it's got to be bespoke, shall we say, to the needs of the people that we're coaching. Because at the end of the day, the coach is an educator, right? That we have to facilitate learning, whatever that looks like for the people that we're working with. That's the thing. It's not necessarily a technical role where you've got to know more and you've got to have trained in Japan or Korea or America or whatever. This just isn't true. The knowledge is in the room a lot of the time, and the way people make sense of things could just as well come from a third cue that goes, the way I make sense of it is this. And the third Dan hasn't been able to articulate that way. It's okay as long as there's learning and eventually improvements in performance. We are doing our job as coaches. So I think that's a really important message that I want to get through.
Cool. My last question was originally for Hiro, but I'll let him start. And then if you guys want to chip in your points, which is basically, what are the qualities that I guess, you guys are all looking at seventh Dan, right? So what are the qualities that you see that set the seventh and eighth Dan apart? And I'm not necessarily grouping them together. I know there's a massive jump between the two. But, as you move into those most senior grades, there's certain qualities that I'm sure are the things that you guys are working on, the things that you see in others, in your examples that you look to. What are your wants for your own Kendo, and what can we the guys coming up just behind you, what can we take away from that?
All right.
Good luck.
I'm glad he got that question.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay.
I thought it'd be an easy ride.
Mate. Well, first off, Andy, again, like Blake said, thank you for sharing the information about Europe. Because I don't really know what's going on in Europe, so I'm really looking forward to going to the next year, the World Championship. I want to hear more about Europe too, and then do some keiko with you. Yeah, that'd be great, isn't it? Yeah, and Blake, thank you, man. Man, you guys, talk pretty well, so I don't know I can talk that well about this bloody topic. All right. Eighth Dan Kendo is out there, man. It's like, I don't know. I don't even see what they're doing. I know when I go against them, I know they're going to hit me, right? They just crash me and I'm done. So, but seventh Dan, since I've been working for seventh Dan quite a bit, and before COVID hit, I did try exam in Japan, and then I failed. And now I know why I failed. I didn't know that, why I failed. I know I wasn't good enough, but now I know. So it's completely different from shiai, isn't it? It's not like hitting. Now you, as a criteria, it's not in the written format, but it's, as a criteria, I heard you have to get an ippon at least in exam. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what I heard. And but no one says, oh, you got an ippon or not, but you really have to get clear cut or close to ippon, right? And I really think it's about what you do before you strike. For seventh dan particularly, how you set yourself up and how you set your opponent up. Setting your traps everywhere. And then, like was saying, you never know what your opponent is going to strike. You don't know what he's going to do to you, and what you don't even know what what kind of opponent you're going against. So you have to set a trap and then build up tension, right? And then you already prepared yourself, and then set up trap. All right, come on. And then if he's not coming, what are you going to do then? Are you going to give him, like you did, Tristan, open up your, you were just take a shiai off the center so your opponent react, and you go, pow, pow. So kind of everything has to be planned from the beginning to the end. And if it
so
doesn't,
really want to see that complete was a sequence, clear
from the beginning to the end. And judges are looking at the process, what you're doing. And even if you get into your striking distance, you don't strike right away. And then you just go, wait a little bit, build more tension. And if you build more tension, that becomes another semi. And we call it tame, right? Tame. And then your opponent suddenly couldn't, stand that kind of pressure, and he moves, and you go, bang, strike. So I think that kind of level of kendo is required for seventh dan up. And eighth dan, again, it's a whole different level. I have no idea what they're doing. But as I started training for, and also a lot of sensei gives us advice, like the peacock in example, owning this space. This is my space. So from the beginning, you have to do that. So
something you always notice about Hachidan Sensei, or eighth dan Sensei in general, at the seminar where they take the keiko, they're only ever going forwards. That's their side until like you see the queue that you were stood in. They're in front of you now, and you're backed up against the wall. Yeah.
Right. So that's again, the Blake was saying, shiai, you can block, but in Shinsa, if you block all the time, that's a big no-no, right? So noted. That's Blake was saying. If your opponent comes and you go semi back your opponent, so it's a bit different strategy. But as you advance in kendo, you have to have that, not blocking all the time, but how you semi back, how you avoid your opponent's cut without blocking. So I think that kind of kendo is really required for higher grade like seventh dan. So I think that's real the quality of kendo should be there, not only just hidden. The quality means that without blocking, how you're going to deal with your opponent before he strikes. I think that is probably seventh dan up.
So it's not just a showing of the understanding of these concepts that we talk about. It's being able to, show that process, that application of all of that in a clear sequence.
Right.
paired with that composure and that leveling up of your entire game of Kendo.
Right. So, and if you understand the concept, you can perform. You have to perform the concept. So I think that's how it's a quality part of Kendo. How much can you perform the concept when you actually practice Kendo?
Anything else to add to that, guys?
I mean, this might be a bit of a can of worms, but I agree. That showing that connection from beginning and all those sorts of things. There's an element of fake it till you make it, I believe. And so far as that's not to take away anything from preparation. You've got to prepare. You can't just turn up on the day and hope for the best. Well, you can, but it might not go that well. But there's taking on this persona is a really important. Again, I keep coming back to this idea of presence and attitude and that peacocking thing. Fake it till you make it's a nice pithy way to say it. Insofar as like, right, I'm just as nervous as everybody else here. But I ain't going to show that, man. Like I'm here. This is my house. Like Hiro said, take your shoes off when you're in my house. You know what I mean? And it's not an arrogance. It's a confidence. So, even though we are feeling absolutely terrified and there's a little bit at stake here, it might be financial. It might be pride. It might be, goodness me, it might even be the survival of your club. The club requires a particular grade in order to stay affiliated or whatever the context is. Going in and being that person, being that grade, or being that the end result right from when you pull up in the car park, I think is a really important attitude or way to frame the attitude that you can bring into gradings. And I say fake it till you make it. As we all agreed, you do become the grade after you're awarded it. So have faith.
That happens a lot too.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And so have faith in that and go, right, okay, there's probably a few things that I would like, maybe a few more minutes of kakari geko or a few extra 100 suburi would have helped. There's always going to be more we could do. But look, I've done the best that I can. The rest of it's in the lap of the Kendo gods. I'll just look the part and let's put ourselves in that best position to get the best result. And it'll be up to the experts at the end of the day. But, there's a confidence that comes with fake it till you make it, I think. And that's, yeah.
I have to totally agree with that, to be honest as well. I think both points are really, really valid. I think there's a couple of things really about the whole sort of process of the strike that you won, and it not just being hitting the other person. It's interesting. I watched grading the other day, a high level grading after the European Championships. Where they do the grading for 6th dan and 7th dan. I'm not going to be too specific because the person I'm talking about is reasonably well known, but it was for one of those grades, and it was a very, very successful shiai player, somebody who's very, very successful in their shiai career. And the grading that they did, they hit the other person several times in both of their tachiai. But often from the sort of feint or from the kind of strange timing or just, and of course they didn't pass, they were unsuccessful. So, it was a really clear example of how, if that was a shiai, they probably would have won that shiai reasonably quickly, but in the grading, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for that entire process, start, middle, and finish of each of the techniques. When I was what I've been thinking about, obviously, I'm also of the opinion sort of 8th dan is like, just don't even ask me about it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. But the 7th dan being the next step for me. When I was preparing for 6th dan, I was very focused on taking the initiative in order to provoke a strike from my partner so that I could catch or not catch, but I could enact the debana timing. Okay, so I could force them to move whilst I was already on my way, and take the sen, as it were, in order to make a successful strike. And to do this requires the seme, as we talked about. I think the point that Imafuji Sensei just talked about in terms of the returning the seme kaishi, I think that's the next step. I feel like in my 6th dan exam personally, there wasn't this situation this time, and they came for the strike, so I was able to work with that. Okay, so I was able to show that I could get them to strike when I want, and I could either hit the debana waza or the kaishi waza or whatever. But there wasn't much kind of the return. So it's almost like it's when it comes from this side, for me to be able to go no or push back on that via seme, rather than, like, say, through blocking or reacting out of desperation, or because I can't handle the pressure, or because I feel, oh, it's the grade and I have to hit this sort of thing, but instead being able to gaman, have the patience to turn back and say, no, this is my show, not yours, and do that. I've of course not really got sort of accomplished at that yet, but I think that's the method, in sort of the direction in which I should take the my keiko, in at least. But and I think as well, I think Blake made a really good point there about the faking it till you make it, because I think that's a really interesting way of putting it. I've never thought of it like that in those specific words, but at the end of the day, the fact is, when you go to a grading, it doesn't matter what level you're at, the other person is roughly the same skill level as you are. Okay, they're roughly the same skill level as you are, roughly the same age, roughly the same experience. Okay, and you're made of the same stuff. Yeah, your muscles and bones, you're the same thing. Okay, so the difference between the two of you is attitude, essentially, and I think that's it, right? It's especially when you get to those higher grades. The lower grades, you know, it can be a more technical aspect. Are you making strikes with Gentai no Ichi? Is it meeting the criteria of Yuko, stuff like that? Once you start looking at the high level grades, then it's about that sort of attitude and how your attitude influences your partner. And it's really, really interesting, because obviously I watch an awful lot of footage of at the moment 7th dan gradings from Japan, where you have these great compilations. YouTube is so good, isn't it? And and it comes and flashes up, this guy passed, this guy failed, this sort of thing. And it's almost like what you're watching is almost like the hikitate geiko, if you know what I mean by that. One of the players, the one that's passing, is the sensei, and this one is the student, almost like that dynamic. You see what I mean? Like, one is over the other one, pulling the other one up almost. And it's not the same as like hikitate geiko you see in the dojo with a sensei and an actual student, but there's a clear difference in the dynamic between the two. They're not facing off almost as peers. One appears to be the senior or the junior. Yeah. And it's a really interesting dynamic as to where they can, who stakes the claim to that, is essentially the key, I guess. And it could change halfway through, right? Potentially, right? So I think that's a really, really interesting point, actually. And I've not really thought of it in that way, to sort of fake it till you make it. But I think that's probably the best description of it I've ever heard. So that's definitely.
You're right, Andy. It boils down to the attitude and the presence. But absolutely, man.
Because otherwise, you run this. You're on the same level on every other aspect. For thereabouts. It's not like someone's going in there that's this, I mean, occasionally that could potentially happen. Obviously, you know, you get All Japan champions turning up to do their 7th dan or whatever, the age of 32 or whatever it is that they do it. Yeah, fine. But for the vast majority of us, that isn't the situation. So, you know.
Yeah, it is. Usually they said, "Oh, if you were to go for, let's say, 7th dan, you act like 7th dan." I've got it.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be my next point, which was there's a YouTuber I follow. His name's Ramsey Dewey. He's an MMA coach operating out in China. And his motto really is that martial arts are, an effort to basically, it's an effort to seek the truth, right, about yourself. So, I think everyone's ultimate goal is to be able to freely express themselves without a filter. Does that make sense? So it's like from the intent to what comes out, the execution, to remove all barriers and obstacles. So when you're starting, you have a lot of that because you have to learn to control your body, you have to coordinate. There's a lot, you have to learn to crawl, then to walk, then to try to run, and so on. And then when you get to the middle levels, it's sort of like, you can do that stuff. You don't think about doing that stuff anymore. But now it becomes thinking about doing harder tasks, right? But to me, it's like how it looks when I look at high-level Kendo, and this is probably why the 8th dan. Whenever I talk to people who are looking at 7th dan or have 7th dan, well, I talk about 8th dan like it's so far away, is because I think that's the feeling of like you're starting to get into that zone of looking at this where the barriers have come away.
I feel like the gap between 7th dan and 8th dan is bigger than between 7th dan and Shodan. It's like, it seems that way.
But it's almost like what you guys are talking about is like it's like you're starting to talk about those tools that you're going to need to have to start looking at that place. Looking at a place where you can even think about those barriers coming down. Does that make sense? That's kind of how it sounds, at least from the outside listening to.
Yeah.
People above my pay grade talk, but it's good learning for me. So thank you. Will we take a couple of questions from the comments and then we'll probably leave it there? Yeah. So there were a couple I noticed from earlier. So do you think it should be mandatory for dojo leaders and sensei to follow a coaching course?
Is that for me?
Of course.
It's just general. It's open to everybody.
I think mandatory is a very strong word.
Yeah.
Mandatory to take Blake's course, right?
Yeah. I agree. Mandatory is a tricky one, but it doesn't hurt, right? But the thing is, it's like, what's the nature of the course? This is what I was saying before. Like, we have to sort of shift away. Like, this is what really gets up my 90. We have these seminars. I understand.
There's certain things that New Zealanders and Kiwis and Aussies say that, like, I just can't get my head around. Sorry, please continue.
Really grinds my goat. Is that better? What we do with seminars, and I understand why. I completely understand why. But we have these seminars. We call them, seminars, coaching seminars, whatever. And we invite as many people as we possibly can from 7th Q to 7th dan. Get everyone in the room, and then we all we can do is hit it straight down the middle, and it's probably about the nidan that gets the most out of the thing, and we call that a seminar. And it's like cool because there's opportunities and we want to learn. I get that, but when we talk about how we can advance kendo beyond, in the around the world, is to really focus in on what it takes to be a successful kendo coach. What is it that we're missing here? It's not just about how good your kote men is or how good your suriage. Those are important, but it's really the way in which we communicate those things to people, which I think is what's missing. You know what I mean? It's like, do this. This is the way you do it. Watch my demonstration. Go and do it. It's like, that's one way, but it's not the way that resonates with enough people. And if you think, I think this is common everywhere in the world, the churn, right? The amount of people come in and then they go. And Kendo wasn't for them. But I wonder, and I really, really want people who are in a coaching position to consider this, how much of that churn can be boiled down to the experience of the member. If you are a successful coach, it's not necessarily about how many gold medals that you've been able to produce through the people that you coach. It's about the experience that people have. You know, Kendo clubs around the world rely on this longevity of their membership because we spend years, thousands and thousands of hours of getting people up to a third dan level, let's say, whether, all right, now you're going to take beginners or however it works in your club. And if we do that, we build them up and then they leave because the experience wasn't what they were after because we didn't take the time to ask, or it was solely about results, or it was solely about grade, and it wasn't like, hey, what do you do for a job? Like what, how many kids do you have? How old are they now? Like we're dealing with people, right? And the thing is that coaching seminars, not just in Kendo, we're talking about all different sports. It's technique, it's tech, strategy, technique, tactical strategy, those sorts of things. And yeah, they're valid, 100%. But how do we interact with our people in order to provide a positive experience that's going to keep them coming? Those are the things that are missing. The inter and intrapersonal skills that we bring to a leadership or an educative position are what's missing. So the question was, is it mandatory or should it be mandatory to do a coaching course? It depends, like all things in education and psychology, depends on the context. I think that if we can shift away from purely doing technical focused seminars and work toward how do you communicate? How do you build a positive culture? How do you infuse reflection in your and your members' experiences in order to continue to grow? That's what Kendo clubs need, not gold medals or trophies. We need people to stay. We need people to stay in our clubs. Otherwise, our clubs aren't ever going to be able to leverage off that hard work. So coaches, to me, to put a real finer point on it, Tristan, coaches to me have a huge responsibility in providing a positive club culture. And that's what is going to keep Kendo growing, surviving and growing in the regions, right? And a coaching seminar, that whatever we do in that aspect, it should be based around that. So it doesn't need to be a Kendo seminar. Go and do a mandatory coaching seminar that's run by your local sport body, and work with coaches, hockey coaches, rugby coaches, soccer coaches, whatever, and learn from them, because we're all dealing with people. We don't coach Kendo, we coach people, right? So that's the key thing, I think, when we talk about professional development for us as coaches.
I would just say to that, I don't know what level the kind of question is kind of posed at, right? So whether you're coming at this as a, within an established overarching governing body with lots of dojo around you, or do you have very little infrastructure and so it's hard to get affiliated? And because in that sense of, should you attend a mandatory course and get signed off for things like, say, for example, a lot of people don't think about the practicalities of child protection, stuff like this, protection of vulnerable people. So there's legal stuff you want to put in place to make sure that you yourself and any other coaches that help you out, that you've got trustworthy people under the roof for a start. And it's a good selling point, right? So if you're going to have kids training at your dojo, you want to be able to demonstrate to parents that this is a safe place for your kids to come, and they're going to be looked after. We've got all the safeguards in place to do that, right? So in that sense, yeah, you definitely want to have certain accreditation affiliation if you can. But if you're talking about the very grassroots level of, I want to start a dojo, and there's no one else out there to help me, it's just me and some people, just get some shiai, get a room, and get cracking. do the best you can with what you've got and build it from there. And you're going to be the front runners, as long as no one packs it in, just keep at it, travel when you can. And, as long as somebody said to me once, the hardest thing about Kendo is sticking to Kendo. If you get over that hurdle, then a lot of the stuff is just going to come with experience and getting around and meeting people, and it will start to fall into place. So so I don't know what level you're posing that question at, but if you take it right back down to the grassroots, that I would say just don't let things stop you. But if you can get yourself accredited and affiliated, these things are always of value. But as Blake says, you go beyond that, and it becomes a much broader thing of how to not just survive but to thrive.
Just to labor that point, like attending coaching seminars that are intended for other, more generic, the intrapersonal skills, those being exposed to conversations about child safeguarding and the importance of the duty of care that we have as coaches, that's key. And as yet, I might be completely wrong on this, but as yet, I have not seen any Kendo seminars that address things like that. It is very technical and tactical and strategic. And what else would he expect if we import a Japanese sensei in order to run it? What would he know or she know about the contextual, the local laws of the land, right? So this is where an initiative needs to come from a federation or from a governing body in Kendo to say, hey, look, we acknowledge that we've got some pretty good people in there. We've got Andy Fishers, we've got Hiro Imafujis, man. We've got the technical knowledge, we've got the experience here. What we're missing is perhaps child safeguarding knowledge, pedagogical knowledge. No offense to either of you two, by the way. I'm just saying in general terms, that those are the things that we might be missing in our federation or in our,
it was a huge shock to me, right? It's a huge shock to me living in Japan for years, only thinking about myself, right? Just turning up to the dojo and, getting beat around the place sort of all the time, to come back to the UK and be like, well, I better set up a dojo because I'm not from London, right? I'm not from the capital city. I'm from a small town out in the middle of nowhere. So it's like, okay, well, I better set up a club, and it presents so many challenges that you don't learn from doing Kendo. Do you know what I mean? And especially you don't learn it from doing Kendo in Japan, because the people here aren't doing Kendo for the same reason the people in Japan are doing Kendo for the most part. And I haven't spent that time in Japan learning how to teach Kendo in that way, into those people. And then all these different things, like you say, like the different laws, things like background checks and stuff like this, working with children, all this sort of stuff. It's all alien, it's just, because it's a totally separate thing, right? It's so any course like that, or any sort of input like that can be huge. I watched one of your videos recently, Blake, actually, where you were interviewing a coach from a different sport on there. I thought it was eye-opening. It was fantastic. And it sent me off on my own little sort of journey of looking for more that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So I think anything like that, and you have to also recognize, one of the big things for me has been recognizing that not everybody that comes to my dojo is committed to Kendo like I am.
Yeah.
Most people just want to do it for 2 hours a week and then go home and forget about it or whatever, because they've got a high pressure job or they've got a family, they've got other stuff to do. It's just another thing that they do. Whereas, they don't have the same motivation or the drive for it that I do. And that's fine. That's not, that's kind of part of it. Right. So it's been massively eye-opening. And I definitely agree that, that any sort of input from even outside of the Kendo sphere could be absolutely, brilliant for Kendo teachers.
Yeah, we got to do it.
I think we'll take
outside of Kendo.
Absolutely.
I think we'll take one more here, and then we're going to wrap it up, because just to the viewers, we're getting on now. We're a bit older. We've got kids and stuff to look after, so we got to go. We have to adult. Anyway, Nicholas Sui Crook asks, if there is an opportunity, can you advise on overcoming a lack of confidence when entering shiai, especially as I presume third Q in brackets? I have a mindset that I will lose, and it seems they seem to have that going into each shiai. Thanks in advance.
I had that mindset like for years. not to sort of discourage you, but like do you know what really helped me? What really helped me get over that was realizing that when I lose, it's not the end of the world. It's not nice. It's not nice. You want to win, yeah, but it's not the end of the world, and most of the time you can learn something from it. My simple answer to that is experience and embrace it. Embrace the fact that you can't win them all. Nobody wins every match. Even the best players in the world don't win every match. So losing is part and parcel of it. I was reading it's downstairs, but I was reading the book that Miyazaki Masahiro published recently, The Art of Continuous Victory. Absolutely fantastic book. And he talks in that about how I think he failed Shodan like 5 or 6 times. And even the top players in the world experience failure a lot. In fact, part of the reason they're the top is because they've experienced it more than the rest of us. So don't beat yourself up about it, man. It's just go and do the shiai, do your best, try your best to win. And when you lose, ask yourself why you lost and try to get better from it.
Yeah, depending on your level of experience in shiai as well. I mean, the way I suppose I approached it in the beginning was, just when I first went to shiai, I was like, I try not to embarrass myself or my club. So like, just try to do the basics right. Like, make sure my gear doesn't come untied, rein nicely, good sonkyo, bags of spirit, and then just do my best, right? And
I think as well that a lot of people say that. A lot of people say that, Tristan. A lot of people say, I just try not to embarrass myself, my club. You're like third Q. You'd have to work pretty hard to embarrass yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, so don't put that much pressure on yourself either. Like, nobody's expecting you to go out there and like properly dominate everybody at that point. So don't worry too much about it. It's not the end of the world. Like I say, I started to see a lot more. I started to see more success, but I just had a better time at shiai once I embraced the fact that it's not nice to lose, but it's not the end of things. It's not over. There's another one. So obviously not that day.
I guess my point with what I was saying there, Andy, was like, I'd have like a small target for myself, and the rest was gravy on top. That, I don't know if you know that expression, very American thing to say, but so if I turn up there and like, I was where I was supposed to be, when I was supposed to be there, and didn't do anything klutzy that I set little objectives. Then the next time I would go, okay, I can do that stuff. So this time I'm going to see if I can just get in the mix and make a reasonable strike. Reasonable strikes. Then and then maybe you land your ippon. So now you're getting a bit hungry. So like, okay, I land an ippon. Now I want to win a match. Okay, I've won a match. Now I want to go somewhere. I get out the pools. Don't put too much pressure on you because it's all going to come with the experience. Can I as you get some momentum, go on ahead, Blake.
Sorry, mate. There's 2 things for Nicholas to do. One is to subscribe to my channel, Kendo Coach. I was waiting for the opportunity. But the video that Andy just referred to will help with this. This Dr. Joe Hall, who I interviewed in that video, was speaking primarily about what's known as a growth mindset. And so both Andy and Tristan have nailed it. Exactly. It's about there's opportunities there wherever you want to find them. There is. When we go in with I've got to win and I don't want to, I don't want to lose, whatever. No one goes out there to lose. But like Tristan said, if we can pick out, if we can set ourselves a goal and attempt to achieve that, setting the goal of I want to win is not a good goal. We've got to think about what's in our control. and attempt to put ourselves in the best position to achieve that, right? So there's your thing. And then when there's a win or a loss or whatever happens, there's an opportunity to learn and grow from that. The second thing to do, aside from subscribing and watching that video, is to get hold of Dr. Carol Dweck's book called Growth Mindset. And it's a very, very good read. It's a very easy read. And it's actually quite intuitive for us as Kendo players, because we say this sort of stuff all the time. Well, you lost a point or something. Don't put yourself in that position, first of all. How can you use that as an opportunity to learn and get better? We do this. We know this stuff inherently. It's when it comes to the competition, then all of a sudden, oh, shit, I got to win because it's a shiai. Then the opportunities for growth or a growth mindset, to apply a growth mindset and learn as a result, go out the window, because we go into what they call a fixed mindset. So those two things, Nicholas, I think are really good. But all four of us have been in that position. None of us, even now, none of us go out with the intention to lose and be okay with it. If I lose, I'm not okay with it, but I'm going to do my best to take something from that, and by hook or by crook, not get hit in the same way next time. Oh, you're on mute, buddy.
You're on mute, pal.
Anything
to add in closing?
Oh, well, they pretty much said everything, but one, like Andy said, it's not the end of the world. You might lose, but what do you get lose? What do you lose out of it? I mean, you only gain. So that's one thing. And Blake pretty much said everything, but I think it's shiai is a part of training as well. Shiai in kanji is you try yourself out there, and you do your best. And if you lose, you lose. If you win, you win. And you have to have a goal. I think pretty much this is from Blake's idea. I took it from him. If you're working on something, you do it in shiai. This is my goal. I want to do kote suiyagemen today. I've been practicing this for the last 6 months, and I want to see how it goes, kind of thing. So if it's a part of your training, it's not about, oh, I want to win. It's too stressful. It's a part of training. I want to do it against someone I don't know. So it's a part of it.
You can't control whether you win or lose. Honestly, man, you can't. You have no control, because first of all, you've got to convince 2 of 3 people with the little flags to put it up for you. What the other guy or girl is doing is, there's contextual factors, like the floor might be stickier than you're used to. It might be really hot today. It might be really cold. There's been 3 hours between your fight. You can't control those things. What you can control is the way in which you move, the attitude that you take in there, your waza selection, those sorts of things. And if it goes your way, great, learn from it. If it doesn't go your way, even better, learn more. And that's, it's easy to say. I know, man. I know it's easy to say, but really that's what it is. And with the benefit of
you'll get over it.
Yeah. Yeah. And being a shimpan is a prick of a job. So, there's that too.
We're as nervous.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. 100%.
If we misjudge, oh man, afterwards.
Yeah, we know it. We know that we misjudge. You just got to keep it so it's
Right, guys. Yeah. Look, thank you very much to all of my guests for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. It's a huge honor for me to have you guys here.
I'm sorry once again, I was late. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I respect and admire your kendo and what you guys are all doing with your projects and your channels, and try not to miss an episode. So if you want to know, if you're somebody who's a viewer of my channel, you want to know where I get all the stuff from, these are the guys. But please do stop by my channel again now that I've told you where to go to the source. But look, if you guys haven't done already, if you no matter where you're coming from viewer wise, if you haven't done already, just pop down in the description. Check out, I've got links to everybody's YouTube channel. So thank you very much again, Andy Fisher from Kendo Star and the Kendo Show. Thank you very much, Masahiro. Imafuji Sensei from KendoGuide.com, and from Bennett Sensei, who's from Kendo Coach. So head over there, hit those links and subscribe. And thank you very much to all the viewers for joining us, whether you're in the present or in the future. All right, guys, until next time.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you very much. Good to see you guys.
Cheers.
See you guys soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.